My husband's sister leaned over at dinner and whispered, "No one cares what you want." I smiled. Fine. I left, taking all the money from our joint account. The next day, she learned she was left with nothing. So there I was, sitting at my mother-in-law's dining table last Tuesday night, trying to keep my cool while my husband's sister Rachel basically treated me like some random chick who wandered in off the street. For real, this woman has been a thorn in my side since day one, but this dinner was about to be the last straw that broke the camel's back. Let me paint you the picture here. The whole family's gathered around this massive oak table, the kind your grandma probably had, you know what I mean? My husband Mark sitting to my right, scrolling through his phone like always, completely checked out from whatever family drama's brewing. His mom's bustling around in her floral apron, bringing out dish after dish like she's feeding an army. And there's Rachel, sitting directly across from me, giving me those looks that could freeze hell over. This whole mess started because I'd been pushing for Mark and me to finally buy our own place. We'd been living in this cramped apartment above his buddy's garage for 3 years now, and honestly, I was getting tired of hearing the Chevy start up at 5 in the morning every single day. I wanted something with a yard, maybe a little garden spot where I could grow some tomatoes. Nothing fancy, just somewhere that felt like home, you know? But every time I brought it up, Rachel would jump in with her 2 cents about how we needed to be smart with money and think about the family first. Real rich, coming from someone who drives a brand new Tesla and lives in a house that probably costs more than most people make in 10 years. The conversation that night started innocent enough. Mark's dad was talking about how the housing market was finally cooling down a bit, and I saw my opening. I mentioned how I'd been looking at this cute little ranch house about 20 minutes outside town. Nothing crazy, just 3 bedrooms and a decent yard. The asking price was fair, and with both our incomes, we could swing it no problem. That's when Rachel decided to pipe up. She set down her wine glass, some fancy bottle she brought to show off naturally, and gave me this condescending smile. That made my skin crawl. "Well, that's all well and good," she said, "but don't you think you should focus on more practical things, like maybe contributing to Mom's medical expenses?" Now hold up. Nobody had mentioned anything about medical expenses to me. Mark's mom looked confused as heck, and even Mark finally looked up from his phone with this "what the heck" expression. "What medical expenses?" I asked, keeping my voice level even though I could feel my blood pressure rising. Rachel waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, preventative care, potential future needs. Someone has to think ahead in this family." The way she said "someone" while looking directly at me made it crystal clear she didn't think I was capable of thinking past my next meal. But I stayed cool because I've dealt with people like Rachel my whole life. Growing up in a small town teaches you how to handle folks who think they're better than everyone else. "I think that's something Mark and I should discuss privately," I said, reaching for my sweet tea, "along with our housing situation." That's when things got real ugly, real fast. Rachel leaned back in her chair and laughed, not a nice laugh, but one of those mean ones that makes you want to throw something. "Honey, you've been discussing a lot of things for years now. Maybe it's time someone told you the truth." The whole table went quiet. Mark's dad stopped cutting his steak, his mom froze with a serving spoon halfway to someone's plate, and Mark's looked like he wanted to disappear into his phone completely. "And what truth is that?" I asked, setting my glass down carefully. Rachel's smile got even nastier. She pushed her chair back slightly and folded her arms. "The truth is that this family has been carrying you for 3 years now. You work part-time at some little boutique, you don't contribute equally to household expenses, and now you want us to help you buy a house so you can play house like some teenager." I felt my face get hot, but I kept my voice steady. "I work full-time at the boutique, and I contribute exactly half of our shared expenses. Mark can confirm that." But Mark just sat there like a deer in headlights, not saying a word to defend me. That hurt worse than anything Rachel could dish out. "Contributing half when half isn't much doesn't really count," Rachel continued. "And now you want to drain family resources for your little fantasy while Mom might need care in the coming years." Update. Just wanted to address some comments I'm seeing. Yes, I probably should have seen the red flags earlier, but you know how it is when you're in the thick of it. Also, some of you are asking about the joint account situation. I'll explain more as the story goes on. But let me ask you this. What would you have done if your partner just sat there while their family attacked you? That's when she really crossed the line. Rachel glanced around the table, making sure she had everyone's attention, then leaned forward and lowered her voice to this whisper that somehow felt louder than if she'd been shouting. "No one cares what you want." Just like that. Cold as ice, mean as a snake, and with this little smirk that told me she'd been waiting to say those exact words for probably years. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. I could hear the wall clock ticking, someone's stomach growling, even the neighbor's dog barking outside. Everyone was staring at their plates like they contained the secrets of the universe. And you know what? In that moment, something just clicked, for me. Like a switch flipped in my brain, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. All those times Mark had forgotten to back me up when his family made their little comments. All those holidays where I felt like an outsider looking in. All those conversations about our future that somehow always got derailed by what his family needed or wanted. I looked at Rachel, still wearing that satisfied smirk, and I smiled right back at her. Not a fake smile, not a polite smile, but a genuine one that probably confused the heck out of her. "Fine," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're absolutely right." Rachel's smirk faltered a little. She wasn't expecting me to agree with her. I stood up from the table, folded my napkin neatly, and placed it beside my barely touched plate. Thank you for the dinner, Mrs. Peterson. It was lovely as always. Mark's mom looked like she wanted to say something, but I was already heading for the door. I grabbed my purse from the little table in the hallway and walked out into the cool evening air without looking back. The whole drive home, I felt this weird sense of calm wash over me, like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years and finally let it out. I cranked up the radio, some old country song about moving on, and started making plans. See, here's the thing Rachel didn't know about me. I might work at a boutique, but I've been managing the books for that place for 2 years now. I know numbers, I know finances, and I definitely know the difference between someone who contributes and someone who just talks about contributing. I also knew that our joint checking account, the one Mark and I had set up to save for our future house, had about $43,000 in it. Money I'd been contributing to steadily while Mark spent his extra cash on things like his gaming setup and those craft beers he was always bragging about. When I got home, Mark was already there, pacing around our little apartment like a caged animal. He started in on me the second I walked through the door. "What the heck was that about?" he demanded. "You just walked out on my family." I set my purse down and looked at him, really looked at him. This man I'd been planning a future with, who couldn't even speak up when his sister basically told me I was worthless. "Your sister told me no one cares what I want," I said calmly, "and you sat there and let her." Mark ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. "She didn't mean it like that. Rachel just gets protective of the family, you know? She's worried about Mom. Your mom seems fine to me, but even if she wasn't, since when is that my financial responsibility?" "It's not about that," Mark said, but I could tell he was scrambling. "It's about being part of a family, supporting each other." Funny how that support only seems to flow one direction. We went back and forth for another hour, but my mind was already made up. Mark kept making excuses for Rachel, kept trying to minimize what she'd said, kept insisting I was overreacting. Never once did he apologize for not defending me. Never once did he acknowledge that his sister had been way out of line. So I did what any rational person would do. I got online and transferred every penny from our joint account into my personal savings, $43,217. Money that was legally as much mine as his, money I'd worked hard to save. Then I started packing. Update. Okay, some of you are asking if this was legal. Yes, it was a joint account, which means I had every right to the money. Others are wondering, if I tried to work things out, trust me, 3 years of trying was enough. Here's my question for you. If someone showed you exactly who they were, would you stick around hoping they'd change? Mark didn't notice anything that first night. He crashed on the couch after drinking a few too many Bud Lights and feeling sorry for himself. But the next morning, when he tried to grab coffee and his card got declined at the drive-thru, reality hit him pretty quick. My phone started ringing around 8 a.m. First Mark, then his mom, then Rachel herself. I let them all go to voicemail while I finished loading my stuff into my Honda. Amazing how little you accumulate when you're always being told to be practical and think about the family first. Rachel's voicemail was something else. She started off trying to sound reasonable, talking about how families have disagreements and we should work things out. But by the end, she was practically screaming about how I couldn't just steal money and abandon my responsibilities. That word, responsibilities, really got to me, because apparently my responsibility was to fund everyone else's comfort while my own dreams got pushed aside indefinitely. I called my best friend Jenny, who'd been telling me for years that Mark's family was toxic. She didn't even say, "I told you so," when I explained what happened, just gave me her spare room key and told me to come over whenever I was ready. The real fireworks started around noon. That's when Mark must have figured out the bank situation, because suddenly my phone was blowing up with texts that went from confused to angry to downright nasty in the span of about 20 minutes. But the best part? Around 2 o'clock, I got a call from Mark's mom. Turns out Rachel had been planning to ask me and Mark to help fund her kitchen renovation. She'd been buttering up Mrs. Peterson for weeks about how the kids should contribute to improving the family home's value. Rachel figured if she could convince everyone I was selfish and irresponsible, she could guilt Mark into funding her fancy new granite countertops. When Mrs. Peterson found out the money was gone, she asked Rachel where her contribution was going to come from. Apparently, Rachel had been counting on our $43,000 to cover the majority of her $20,000 renovation dream. The conversation didn't go well for Rachel. Mrs. Peterson apologized to me about 6 times during that phone call. She said she'd had no idea Rachel had been planning to manipulate the situation, and she felt terrible about how dinner had gone. She even offered to talk to Mark about his behavior, but I told her that was between him and me. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already made up my mind. I'd spent 3 years trying to fit into a family that saw me as a convenient source of labor and funding, rather than an actual person with valid dreams and opinions. Rachel's whispered comment had just been the truth finally coming out. Over. The next few days, the calls and texts kept coming. Mark tried everything from anger to bargaining to what I guess was supposed to be romance. He showed up at Jenny's place with flowers and some speech about how we could work things out. But when I asked him point blank if he thought his sister had been out of line, he hemmed and hawed and finally said maybe we could set some boundaries going forward. Too little, too late. Rachel, meanwhile, was apparently having her own crisis. Without the money she'd been counting on, her renovation plans were dead in the water. She'd already put down deposits with contractors, picked out materials, even told her friends about the amazing new kitchen she was getting. Now she was stuck explaining why everything was suddenly canceled. Mark's dad called me once trying to play peacemaker. He's always been the reasonable one in that family, and I genuinely felt bad about disappointing him. But when he started talking about family forgiveness and moving past this, I had to be honest with him. Mr. Peterson, I said, if someone told your wife that no one cared what she wanted and you just sat there and let it happen, how do you think she'd react? He got quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and said, I understand your point. I really do. That was the last call I took from any of them. Jenny helped me find a little apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it had a balcony where I could put some potted plants. The rent was reasonable, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to run every financial decision past someone else or worry about contributing to some family emergency fund that never seemed to help me when I needed it. I kept working at the boutique, but started looking into other opportunities. Turns out managing books for a small business had given me more experience than I realized. Within a month, I had 3 job interviews lined up, including one with a local accounting firm that offered benefits and actual growth potential. The house hunting started a few weeks later. Not the little ranch I'd been looking at. That felt like someone else's dream now. Instead, I found this adorable townhouse with a tiny yard and big windows that let in tons of natural light. The down payment would take a chunk of my savings, but it was my money and my choice. I ran into Mark at the grocery store about 2 months after I'd left. He looked terrible, like he'd been living on takeout and energy drinks. He tried to approach me in the produce section, but I just nodded politely and kept shopping. What was there to say? But I did hear through mutual friends that things weren't going great for him. Turns out, when you're used to splitting everything 50-50 and suddenly you're covering all the expenses alone, life gets expensive pretty quick. He'd had to move back in with his parents, which meant dealing with Rachel's mood swings about her failed renovation daily. Speaking of Rachel, she apparently tried to get a loan for her kitchen project but couldn't qualify on her own. All that bragging about financial responsibility, and she couldn't actually manage her own credit well enough to fund her dreams. The irony wasn't lost on me. Update. A lot of you are asking what happened next and if I ever got closure. Well, here's the thing about closure. Sometimes you have to make your own. But I will say this. Do you think someone who showed their true colors so clearly deserves a second chance to hurt you? The best part of this whole situation happened about 6 months later. I was at a coffee shop near my new job. Yeah, I got the position with the accounting firm. When I overheard 2 women talking at the next table. One of them was complaining about her sister-in-law, describing this woman who sounded suspiciously familiar. She thinks she runs the whole family, the woman was saying. Always sticking her nose in other people's business, trying to control everything. But karma caught up with her recently. I couldn't help myself. I leaned over slightly and said, "Excuse me, but are you talking about someone named Rachel?" The woman's eyes went wide. "Do you know her?" I smiled and introduced myself. Turns out this was Rachel's neighbor, who'd witnessed the whole kitchen renovation meltdown firsthand. According to her, Rachel had become the neighborhood entertainment as she tried to explain to various contractors why her project was suddenly canceled. But the really good part was what happened with Mark. Without me contributing to expenses, and with his family dynamics completely disrupted, he'd apparently had to take a hard look at his own behavior. His mom had been asking some pointed questions about why he'd never defended me, and his dad had made some comments about respect in relationships. Rachel, meanwhile, was dealing with the consequences of her own actions. Her manipulation had backfired. Spectacularly, she was out several $1,000s in deposits, and the family dynamic she'd worked so hard to control had completely fallen apart. Mrs. Peterson had started setting firmer boundaries about family interference, and Rachel wasn't handling it well. The neighbor told me Rachel had been complaining to anyone who'd listen about how I'd destroyed the family by leaving. But when she tried to get sympathy from other neighbors, most of them just looked at her like she was crazy. Apparently, the idea of blaming someone for leaving after being treated poorly didn't resonate with normal people. As for me, I bought my townhouse 3 months later. It's got a little garden where I grow tomatoes and herbs, and the morning light, through the kitchen window, is absolutely perfect. I make my coffee in my own kitchen, in my own house, with money I earned and saved without anyone telling me how to spend it or what my priorities should be. The accounting firm turned into a great opportunity. My boss recognized my attention to detail and practical experience, and I got promoted to senior bookkeeper within 8 months. The pay increase meant I could actually start planning for things I wanted, like the vacation to Ireland I'd always dreamed about, or the online courses I wanted to take to expand my skills. I did hear one more thing about Rachel that made me smile. Apparently, she'd started dating this guy who seemed really into her at first. But when she tried to pull her usual controlling behavior, telling him how to spend his money, interfering with his family relationships, he noped out of there faster than you could say red flag. Some people never learn. The funny thing is, I'm not even angry anymore. That whole experience taught me something valuable about knowing my worth and not accepting treatment that made me feel small. Rachel's whispered comment, "No one cares what you want," turned out to be the push I needed to realize I was the only one who needed to care about what I wanted. Mark texted me once on my birthday, some generic message about hoping I was doing well. I didn't respond, but I did think it was interesting that he reached out. Maybe he'd finally figured out what he'd lost, or maybe he was just feeling nostalgic. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. The best revenge, they say, is living well. And let me tell you, I'm living pretty darn well these days. I've got my house, my job, my independence, and my self-respect. I wake up every morning in my own space, make decisions based on what I want and need, and don't have to justify my choices to anyone who thinks I don't matter. Rachel got exactly what she wanted. No one caring about what I wanted. The problem was, she forgot that included me not caring about what she wanted either. And when the person providing the financial stability you're trying to control decides they're done being controlled, well, that's when you learn some hard lessons about consequences. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is someone showing you exactly who they are and how they really feel about you. Rachel did me that favor, even if she didn't mean to. She gave me the clarity I needed to stop trying to fit into a situation that was never going to work and start building something that actually made me happy. These days, when I'm working in my garden or cooking dinner in my bright kitchen, I sometimes think about that dinner table conversation. But instead of feeling hurt or angry, I just feel grateful. Grateful that someone finally said out loud what I'd been sensing for years, and grateful that I had the strength to believe I deserved better. Because here's the thing about people like Rachel. They count on you accepting their version of reality, where your needs don't matter and their wants are the priority. But the moment you stop accepting that deal, the whole house of cards falls down. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen for everyone to see the situation clearly. I'm doing great now, better than I ever was when I was trying to make everyone else happy at my own expense. My little townhouse feels more like home than anywhere I lived during those 3 years of walking on eggshells. And every morning when I wake up and remember that I don't have to worry about someone else's family drama or financial schemes, I smile and start my day feeling grateful for having the courage to choose myself. As for Rachel and Mark and the whole situation that brought me to that breaking point, well, they're all dealing with the consequences of their choices, just like I'm enjoying the benefits of mine, and honestly, that feels like exactly the right ending to this story.